UFC 280 happens on October 22nd. The headline is Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev. This is basically like Tony Ferguson versus Khabib. That's basically what a lot of people are comparing this to, just because it's the classic Sambo versus Jiu-Jitsu guy. And I actually agree with that a lot, even though one thing that I will have to give Charles Oliveira over Tony Ferguson is that he's a much more technical version of Tony. Tony, whenever it comes to scrambles and being unorthodox and weird and all that kind of stuff, it plays into his advantage sometimes, but then it gets him caught sometimes. And that's where I would have to give, again, a lot of credit to Charles, because he's still very, I would say, maybe not technically unorthodox, but he throws things constantly from everywhere, and it just overwhelms his opponent. So it's almost as if Tony Ferguson actually went to a real fight camp and had real coaches and developed fundamental skills from the very beginning. And that would be Charles Oliveira. For Islam Makhachev, I don't know if I would say that he's a better version of Khabib. I wouldn't say that he's a worse version of Khabib. To be honest, we don't really know, because he hasn't really fought the top of the top yet. So if Khabib and Tony Ferguson would have fought, I don't think it would have been super competitive. The reason being is because whenever you look at other competition that Khabib just completely ran through, like Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, I think they're on a different level than Tony Ferguson, and he took them out very quickly. So whenever you look at somebody in comparison like Islam Makhachev, I don't think really anybody, especially right now, would say Islam is better than Khabib. If anything, it's a little bit of a downgrade. Also, both guys are known for being very technical. Whenever it comes to Islam versus Khabib style, Khabib is much more of a marauder. He's much more of just a ground and pound. He gets you down, he gets positioned, and then he just starts ground and pounding. But Islam is much more methodical with the way that he moves, with the way that he establishes position and wants to go to the next position before he starts ground and pounding. Also, another big part of Oliveira's game plan in every single one of his fights, especially his title fights, are that whenever he gets hurt, he falls to his back. It's a technique that Nate Diaz does a lot, and it's very smart, because whenever you get hit and you get rocked like that, it takes a second. That's why you see the guy, he'll be running around the cage for, 3, 4, 5 seconds just to get the cobwebs off. But then if your jiu-jitsu is so good that the guy's not going to come inside your guard, then you can just fall to your back and you'll have 5, 10 seconds to clear the cobwebs before they even restart the fight. However, with Islam, that's not going to happen. He's not going to have those opportunities to recover. So it's interesting to think that in every single one of Charles Oliveira's fights, in title fights, he's gotten rocked and he's fallen to his back. He won't be able to do that in this fight. So whenever they're standing, and let's say Islam does rock him, what happens whenever he rocks him and then he falls to his back, and now he's on his back for the entirety of that round, and now he's lost the round. But I would say it's one of Charles' best defenses that will probably not work in this fight. So lastly, Charles Oliveira didn't make weight last title defense, so technically it wasn't a title defense. So again, technically he only has one title defense, but a lot of the MMA community dove a little bit deeper into the situation, and they know that Charles was using a scale that was supposed to be the exact same as what the official UFC scale is. But apparently it was in kilograms instead of pounds, some craziness. Now obviously that doesn't matter. If you don't make weight, you don't make weight. I'm not making excuses. But in, I would say, the majority of UFC fans' eyes, if Charles Oliveira beats Islam Makhachev on Saturday, that will be his third title defense. Now, why is that important? So Khabib, the GOAT of the lightweight division right now, he defended the title 3 times. Also, Khabib tied Benson Henderson with 3 title defenses. So that is the record right now. The record to beat is 3 title defenses. Whenever you hit that 3rd title defense, like a lot of fans' eyes Charles Oliveira could do, that automatically puts you in title contention. So to be honest, this is one of the first fights that I didn't really even think about picking a fighter, But if I had to pick, I would go with Charles Oliveira. The reason why I picked Charles Oliveira is because I see this fight going in a similar direction as a lot of other fights with two great wrestlers. What happens is their wrestling gets canceled out. It's like Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington. They take down their opponents in every single fight. And it's wonderful, it's awesome, they put a pace on their opponent like no one else can. But whenever they fight each other, they understand that their opponent at that point has the pace to match them and has the wrestling to match them. So then they're like, well, if I go in for a takedown, I'm not going to be able to take the guy down more than likely. So what I'll do is not even try, because if I do, then I'm giving him my endurance. I'm giving him my gas tank, and then he has an advantage over me. I don't think either of these guys will go too hard on the wrestling. So I think if you told me that neither one of these guys are going to be on the ground for the whole fight, then it changes everything. And I don't think too many analysts would argue that Charles Oliveira seems to be much more sound on the feet than Islam Makhachev. So I will go Charles Oliveira, third round submission. But yeah, so that's the predictions for UFC 280. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.